There was a point in 2018 where I'm gonna be a little honest here. My wife and I broke up. We split, and I'm probably 100 pounds overweight. And I'm sitting there, and I'm looking at myself, and I don't even recognize myself. And I'm like, oh, so this is what rock bottom looks like. This is what rock bottom feels like, right?
Right.
And the thing about being at rock bottom is that you are probably there longer before you realize that you're there, right?
Hmm.
So I'm like, well, I have nothing else to do, nothing else to lose, so I'm gonna figure out what my issues are.
Hi, I'm Andy, and welcome to another episode of the Rip Body podcast. Today, I'm speaking with Joe, who's a 44-year-old community college teacher in El Paso. Joe has lived at both extremes, from a rail thin 140 pounds, this is at 6'2", by the way, to a 280-pound peak. Now, he's lost over 100 pounds since then and has kept it off for 5 years, but he hasn't changed much since, and that's despite bulking and cutting several times. On the face of it, it looks like Joe has been doing everything right, but when we dig in, there are a couple of simple tweaks that I believe that he can make that will help him take his physique permanently to the next level within 2 years. We talk about the moment he decided to change after hitting rock bottom, how CrossFit helped him kickstart his transformation, the mistakes that cost him hard-earned muscle mass during past cuts, why long, patient bulks are the missing piece in his journey from here, and how to push through the mental battles of seeing the scale climb. Let's dig in. You said you work at a community college. Now, the only
Yeah.
time I've ever heard that word community college is from watching the TV show Community. Is it anything like that? I really hope so.
I think in certain places, I don't think where I work, because it's a lot of comedy, right? There's not a lot of comedy around here.
No? Everyone's pretty serious about their studies then?
Yeah, I would say some people are more serious than others, and that goes for everybody in this environment. With the students, some of them are just here because they don't know what else to do. Some of them have a clear goal that they want to work towards achieving. And so we have the spectrum,
And you're an English teacher, right?
right? So I get to
But-
teach everybody's least favorite subject.
But I thought, so is it like the first year people have to take everything and then from then on they get to choose what they
Right.
major in?
There are what we call classes that are part of the core curriculum, and these are kind of sometimes the students will refer to this as the basics, or the kind of the swath of classes that everybody needs to take before they start specializing in their fields of study.
Gotcha. I see.
Yeah.
And sorry to those listening, that's obviously very obvious to you if you're American. Forgive my English ignorance. The system in the UK is quite a funny one. And when I say funny, I mean it in the non-ha-ha system. So when you're 16, you get a piece of paper put in front of you and it's a UCAS form, we call it, University and Colleges Admissions Form. And they're like, right, choose what subjects you want to do from like a zillion courses and your 2 universities that you'd like to go to, the one you think you'd like to strive for, and then a backup. Yeah. And then you also submit an essay. And it's like our universities, you have to choose your major right then. This is when you're 16, turning 17, which is kind of like saying to a 16-year-old, okay, choose your life path when you actually have no idea. Well, I mean, most have absolutely no idea what you want to do. I very much like your system because, I mean, most of us at university in the UK, I don't think, we just know that we should go to university. We don't really know why it is that we're there further than that, studying what we're studying.
That's right. We share a lot of the similarities here in the US also.
Now, you're a dog dad, 44 now, I believe, married for 20 years. You
Almost, yeah.
have, yeah, congratulations. That's definitely an achievement. You're in El Paso, Texas. Yeah.
That's in Texas. Yep.
Boom. There we go. Right.
Pretty
See,
close.
knowledge
So
out.
we are on the border between New Mexico and Juarez, Mexico. We are both a very important national center and as well as a pretty important internationally, because we have bridges that connect the 2 international cities, and we have people who come and go every day, including students, workers, people just visiting family on both sides. So it's not just one direction.
Oh, very cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that must be, again, forgive my ignorance, this is a stupidity here. This must be then southwest border.
Correct.
Okay, I've only ever been over on the other side. So Houston, Austin, and Dallas. And Wichita Falls, I went to see Mark Ripto the one time when we were signing a
Oh, wow.
contract to to bring his book over to Japan. So
Wow.
that's the extent of my Texas experience. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to make it over to that west side yet. I believe, though, it's hundreds of miles of nothing for the most part. Or is that more northeastern Texas?
I think it's a lot like other places in the country where once you're outside of the metropolitan areas and the cities, then there's a whole lot of nothing. So don't get lost.
Yeah. Yeah. Or carry lots of water and have a reliable car, right?
Yeah.
Toyota or
Yeah.
something.
Don't necessarily rely on cell service in some of these places.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you were obese as a kid, but then as you went through your teens, you leaned out. Was this purposeful? Was this just natural with puberty? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I have a very complicated history with body weight. So I was just telling somebody recently when I was 12 years old, at one point I had hit over 200 pounds. And to put that into
Wow.
context, I'm about 180 pounds right now. So I think that's about 82 kilos for a 12-year-old to be that weight. And I think I was maybe, I don't know, just over 5 feet. That's pretty
Really?
substantial. I was a
Wow.
big kid,
Okay.
but
Because you're 6'2" now, just for context
Mhm.
for people. Okay. Yeah. Wow.
In the US, we have what's called middle school. It's primary school, but it's like the upper levels of primary school.
Yep.
And in middle school, I started playing sports a little bit, and that helped me shed some weight. So that kind of put me on the track. I sort of made the connection that movement and physical activity somehow equated a lighter body weight. So that kind of, I think, propelled me to keep physically active in high school and college. And even when I was at my heaviest, I was still somewhat active, but I just had forgotten how to eat healthily, if I ever knew how.
And how did your weight change over those years into college then, from say 12 to college?
So I actually played soccer in middle school, and that helped a lot because we were
Good
just
sport.
running around.
We can
Right.
call it football by the proper name.
Football game.
I know that's going to
Right.
offend you as
I
someone from Texas,
don't
because
know.
obviously it's a religion. It's the first religion there, right?
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah, you're not wrong about that. But if I recall correctly, so I lost somewhere in the area of 60 pounds in middle school.
Um,
And then you're growing, you're a young kid, you're just getting bigger and filling out. I think I hit 150 as a high school freshman. And then in my junior year of high school, I hit 215. I remember that. And I was a little
mm,
heavy again. So I did what I had learned previously, which is just hunker down and start excessively exercising. And I was able to come down to about 180 when I graduated, right the body weight that I am right now. And then college gets complicated because I started about 180, but then I gained some weight. I was doing some bulking. And I think I was about 200 pounds at my heaviest, but I was getting too uncomfortable in that body. I had struggled with depression. And I also noticed that when I hit these depressive bouts, I would stop eating as much. And I hadn't made that connection, anything between calories and energy balance. Now, this is circa the year 2000, and
yep.
information isn't like what it is today. And you're just reading bodybuilding magazines, and bodybuilding forums weren't really a thing yet. So it was really hard to find any information, let alone reputable information. I was excessively exercising, and then I started under eating, and I didn't really know I was under eating as much as I was. But there was a point in college, as somebody at my current height, I had hit something like under 140 pounds. So
Right. Wow. Okay.
I was constantly oscillating these extreme highs, these extreme lows.
Yeah.
That was about the time I met my wife, and happier days came, and we started eating out a lot. Not a lot, but I
Sure,
think it
you're a
was also
student.
just right. And I think it's just the fact of the energy density of foods, as we would say now, or as we could say, very hyper palatable, low fiber foods and very energy dense. And it's easy to overconsume. So when we got married, my weight had already ticked up to about 220, but I was very strong. And I was kind of rationalizing it like, I'm the strongest I've ever been. Of course, my body weight's going to be a little higher. And I wasn't like a power lifter strong, but for me, relatively, it was the strongest I'd ever gotten to.
Sure.
But little by little, over the years, my weight just kept ticking up. So I hit 230, 240, 250, and I hovered between, I would say, 240 and 250 for a few years. And then my wife and I worked out at a CrossFit style gym, cross training gym, and we hired some trainers, and I worked out for the whole summer. And this is in the Southwest heat, like outside. And after all those brutal workouts, I was only able to get my weight down to about 220. And I really kind of hit a wall and I couldn't get past that. We stopped working out with the trainers and then my weight just kept creeping back up. And then I wasn't really checking my body weight frequently back then.
Yeah.
But I know at one point I had hit about 280 pounds. And this was
Oh,
when I was in graduate school, very sedentary, doing a lot of work, just sitting and reading and writing a lot. And so the physical activity had kind of taken a backseat. So there came a point where I had whittled down to 250 on my own, just making a little bit better choices, more physical activity. But then I'm like, this is not sustainable. I'm very unhappy. There was a point in 2018 where I'm going to be a little honest here. My wife and I broke up. We split, and I'm probably 100 pounds overweight. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking at myself and I don't even recognize myself. And I'm like, oh, so this is what rock bottom looks like. This is what rock bottom feels like, right?
right.
And the thing about being at rock bottom is that you are probably there longer before you realize that you're there, right?
Mm.
So I'm like, well, I have nothing else to do, nothing else to lose. So I'm going to figure out what my issues are. And to put my fitness into perspective, when I was probably the most fit in college, I could run like 2 hours on a treadmill, of course, but I could run 2 hours like at 7 miles an hour without really missing a beat.
Mm.
And I had a pretty good mile. And so this one day, this was in 2018, I'm probably about 270 at this point. Now, I went to a commercial gym that I belonged to and I lifted weights for a little bit. And then I decided to get on the treadmill and test out my mile. And I couldn't even jog for 3 minutes. And I'm like, this is pathetic. So I
Right.
drove right over to a CrossFit box and I signed right up. And that was one decision. I'm not attributing anything that I learned just from that one thing, but it was an action, right? It was a
Yes.
step in the right direction.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. So honestly, I'm very interested in these points, these, oh shit, I need to take action. There's that point, and then there's the day you take action, and they're not always the same day, but very often there are. And yours is obviously deeply personal. Actually, they often are. I can totally understand that. When you said that you were obese as a child, you actually were. This was not an exaggeration. And your weight has fluctuated your entire life, really. And as an adult at 6'2", you've been 140 and you've been 280. So you've halved your body weight at one point, or rather doubled your body weight at one point, and now you're back down near 100 pounds down. Very impressive. Okay, so you've walked into this CrossFit box. That's your next action. You've signed up and you chose the CrossFit. Why? What was your thinking there?
When we had worked out with trainers that first go around, I think that was 2014 or 2015. And when you look around at the bodies in the CrossFit box, it's just very athletic, very svelte, very lean, very physically capable of doing things. And when you're looking at the bodies in the commercial gym, not to be judgmental, but it's a very different population, right? So if you're trying to model yourself off of somebody, who do you want to be? So I figured they know something I don't. Let me lean that way for a minute. So I walked into a CrossFit gym and signed up, and I couldn't even get through the first WOD. I had it. I went like halfway through it, and like the coach was like, "You know what? I think you're good. Why don't you just hang out?"
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I remember the first time I had 3 3-minute rounds on not a punching bag, sorry. It was with a boxing trainer. I couldn't get through the first 3 minutes. When the trainer's holding the pads,
Mhm.
it just absolutely wrecked me. It was the most humbling thing. So I completely get it. You're not alone there. Okay. And putting yourself in an environment where everyone's getting at it, where it's a great training environment, I think that's very smart because you're going to want to rise to that level. Okay. So then tell us what happens there, because you've lost 100 pounds since there. What is your journey since then? I've got to imagine that at some point it's going to click in your mind that there's a limit to how much exercise is going to take the fat off of me. I now need to start actively focusing on my diet. Can you take us through that, please?
Right. I joined the CrossFit gym in June of 2018. And I told myself that I was so unfit and I didn't know anything about nutrition that I thought it was going to be too much to handle to do everything at once. So I kind of gave myself permission just to eat how you have been, do all these workouts, let your body recover, kind of build up your fitness, and we'll go from there. And I lost a modest amount of weight doing that. And then at the end of the year, I was still pretty heavy. I was still in the high 230s, I think. But I'm like, okay, in 2019, let me see what I can do about my diet. So I learned how to diet basically in 2019. And it was so confusing. It was so confusing because you hear people say calories don't matter. It's all hormones, right? It's one of my favorite lines ever. And diet soda, that if you're drinking, I'm like listening to a podcast or a YouTube video and I'm drinking a diet soda and they're like,
I'm
diet
sorry.
soda is making you fat.
I'm sorry for my industry. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
sorry.
all right. But there's so much noise, there's so much misinformation, and it's so confusing. And then it's a lot of content marketing. And if you're not aware of what that is, people are just going to string you along until they can sell you their product.
Yeah.
But I finally figured out how I understood the calories or the energy balance model, and I started playing with my calories. I used the tracker, a simple Fitness Pal, and I was just started logging things. And little by little, I started chipping away. And when I got to every milestone, I was like, oh, I'm not going to get to this one. And so I got to about 210. I'm like, I got to 210. There's no way I'm getting under 200. And then I did. And then I'm like, that's cool. That's great. I'm not getting under 190. And then I did. And I'm like, that's pretty awesome, but there's no way I can get under 180. And then I did. And you know what? I kept dieting and I ended up, and this is 2019. No, this is actually right after the pandemic. This is it right after the lockdown. I had to hit 145 again after the lockdown. And so
Wow.
I kept dieting down, but that's where I lost the most muscle because I just wasn't active because the gyms weren't available. And that's,
Oh.
yeah. So
Oh,
I just,
okay. I wondered why you said you lost a lot of muscle, especially given
yeah,
that you were training. Okay. Okay. One thing I want to highlight here, and then I want to pick up the thread again. So you've consistently set yourself attainable goals, and you've been delighted when you've reached them. And then you've set yourself a new attainable goal that is just another step ahead. So one thing that you did was you told yourself, I'm going to go and do these CrossFit classes. I'm going to go and join this great gym where people are really fit, and I'm going to go and do the classes and see what happens. And you did that until the end of the year. What you didn't say to yourself was, well, I'm going to join the gym. I'm going to have only salad with a bit of chicken. I'm not going to have any alcohol ever, ever, ever. Eating out is now banned, blah, 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 blah. No. You did it one step at a time. And I've no doubt that's what led to you being successful. So that was, whether purposeful or inadvertently, it was very smart and would definitely the way to go, I'd say to people, because so many people try to run before they can walk or jog. So you
yeah.
got down to, sorry, please. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, I had over dieted. I had really restricted my calories. I started doing some intermittent fasting, and then I started pushing the fast a little bit longer, which
Mm,
it can be a useful tool in certain contexts, but not when you're trying to be an athlete or work or trying to generate physical force or trying to be an athlete or trying to perceive yourself as an athlete. So I just chewed up a lot of muscle, and when the gyms opened again, I went to another gym and I was so weak. To put it in context, okay, when I was at my strongest, when I was about 30, and even though I was about 250, I could bench press over 300 pounds for multiple reps, right?
nice. Yes.
But when I got to the gym after the gyms opened after the lockdown, and I'm about 145, I laid down on the bench press and I couldn't do 135 for 6 reps. I think I got 6 reps, but it was just
Mm,
the struggle. So, like,
mm,
to see how not just my body weight, but my strength and my endurance, everything just changed so radically. So then when they say the plot thickens, the plot does thicken in a minute.
mm.
So the gyms reopened. I started going to CrossFit again. I was so skinny, I couldn't perform. I'm getting lightheaded. I'm feeling like I'm going to pass out after just about every repetition of every movement. I got to a point where I had read that most people regain all of the weight that they lose within 5 years. And this terrified the bejesus out of me. I just
Yeah.
spent a whole lifetime with weight fluctuations, not understanding how to maintain a healthy body weight. And then I come face to face with this fact that is 80% of people are going to regain any body weight that they lose. And some people are going to gain more and they're going to end up worse than when they started. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to let this happen. I've really got to figure out what's going on here. My appetite was like through the roof. I was so food focused because I'm basically emaciated.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to perform all these physical movements and all this exercise. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to try building up my body again. So I increased calories a little bit. And then October of 2020, I'm doing some deadlifts and I had been practicing them and I had been doing them again. And so this wasn't new, but I was so depleted and so weak. And I had no business doing anything heavy like this. And I was only working with 225, which is about 100 kilos.
Mm.
So I did a set of 6 and I really wanted this 6th rep for some reason.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I'm going to get it. And it was a grinder rep, right? So like I'm coming up and I'm just shaking and I'm pulling. It must have been like 5 seconds or maybe longer, but I'm pulling it and I get to the top of the rep. And then what happens is I nail the top of it. And then I just kind of like go like this real quick. And because
You
something happened, something popped.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
my left hip, what I later found out was what probably happened was my left hip popped out of the socket for a second and that tore the labrum, which is
Oh,
the soft connective tissue that holds the femur into the hip socket, right?
oh,
So
oh, oh.
it was terrible. It was the worst pain
Wow.
I've ever experienced. So,
Wow. That
right,
doesn't happen. Like,
right. You
oh
don't think
no.
that's going to happen. And
No.
when I
It's a
tell people to
really
be
strong
careful,
joint. Yeah.
right, I tell people be careful. Like, don't do grinder reps. You don't know what's going to happen. Like, just because you have the willpower and you
Yeah,
have the
yeah.
motivation doesn't mean your body's going to allow you to carry it out, right?
Mm.
So here I am, 140 some pounds, and now I have a busted hip, and now I can't do all the movements that I wanted to, and I'm weak, I'm frail, I'm just depleted mentally. So that's when I really started diving even more into nutrition, and I found this pocket of literature called recovery nutrition. So I've really focused on building my hip up. So that meant that I had to come into a surplus because if you have a debilitating physical injury and you're trying to maintain a calorie deficit, you're not doing your body any favors. Your body's likely going to pull the body proteins from other places to repair that injured site. I had to come into a surplus, and that was really hard. And I allowed myself to come up into the 160s, and I felt pretty good with my hip. And after a few months, I could do some kind of like body weight squats. And I started rebuilding with physical therapy, just redoing those movements. And little by little, I started loading it up. But I maintained my body weight in the 160s for about a year because I was just so terrified that I was going to start gaining all that weight back again because I really hadn't figured out, like, I understood calories, but I didn't understand my own appetite signaling, the hunger signaling, how different foods will affect satiation and satiety. I really, really dove into all these things and tried to give my body all the nutrients it was craving for. If anybody's nutrient leveraging or protein leveraging, things like this, your body is like communicating you. It's sending signals for you to read to provide it what it wants, right? And what it needs.
Mm. Mm.
So a lot of all this, what I tell people is that you're learning a language, and that language is how your body is communicating with you. And
Mhm.
so many people are just kind of illiterate to this language. You eat something and your stomach rumbles. Well, why is it doing that? I don't know, but I'm going to keep eating that thing. So it's like, what is your body telling you? For better or worse, your body is very smart. It's smarter than we give it credit for, and certainly smarter than us, or definitely smarter than me in my case.
Mm.
But just we have to kind of figure out what that language is and just pay attention and respond. Just give it what it's asking for.
So it was, you got down to the 140s, you were actively trying to maintain that. You did have a high degree of hunger at that time then, but you had read that most people regain their weight within 5 years, which is probably true. I mean, most people, they diet and then they rebound, and that happens because they haven't set themselves up with a collection of habits that were sustainable in the first place to get them to where they wanted to go. And then you had the forcing function of gaining a bit more weight was the injury. And you were smart to, right now I'm not. I mean, you can see that doesn't look right, does it? Yeah, there's a bit stickyouty there, right? You know, while those ligaments are torn, right? I just pointed to my shoulder for Joe, for anyone who's listening rather than watching the YouTube. You don't want to be in that calorie deficit. And so you actively now put yourself into the surplus and you gained, I don't know, 15-ish, 20 pounds. You then figured out that it's not just the calories that you eat, but the types of food that you eat, the calorie density or lack of the food that you eat and the palatability of it, like how delicious it is also going to have a large effect on whether you can sustain your weight without really monitoring your calories or not. So what are we talking about here? Well, if you were to try and keep on sustaining your weight while eating pizza and Pop-Tarts, that's going to be much, much harder because you're going to have much higher degrees of hunger than if you were eating, say, having a lot of fruits and vegetables and lean meats and dairy, etc. Okay, so now you're at the 160s. Now, at what point were you like, I feel comfortable and I want to bulk? Where did this come in?
Like I said, in October 2020, I had the hip injury and I
Mm,
brought my weight up a little bit into the
mm,
160s, and I maintained that throughout 2021. And then I think it was at the end of 2021 where I decided to do another proper bulk because I was still really weak. And I have a video of myself from 2021 of trying to do some pull-ups. And I was actually just trying to check my form. I was really struggling and I was able to do 4 reps. And the last 2 reps were grinders, right? And
mm.
then a year later, after I had bulked, I was able to do 15 reps. And I have both of
Nice.
these on video. I'm a lot fuller and it's a lot faster. And, in between those 2 points, what I did was I just increased my calories. Protein pretty much remained constant. Most of the extra calories came from carbs. But mostly what I'm doing is just I had kind of built a menu of foods that I really enjoyed, but also provide me everything that I needed in terms of satiety and hunger signaling and keeping me satiated, and also a good mix of nutrients and fiber and all these things that we often overlook. And so what I did was I mostly just increased those portions. I didn't really start in the bulk. I didn't start say, okay, and now's the time to start getting some pizza, even though I would include that on,
Sure.
sparingly. But if I ever did, it was in such tightly controlled portions. And it was always the way that I tend to think of it is like something like pizza, as delicious as it is, for me, it's not going to be ever again. It's never going to be like the feature of the meal, right? It's
Yep.
gonna treat it like it's a dessert. Not
Yeah.
that I have
Okay.
it at the end, but you want to keep it in these very controlled portions, and it's not going to be the feature, right? So I just had my meals in place. I just increased the sizes a little bit. My body weight kept trickling up a little bit, and then I constantly worked out, just increased the volume a little bit, push things, progressive overload, and I did that for I think can't remember if it's 4 or 6 months, but I had hit a body weight of 190, and then I decided to do a cut, and I actually cut myself down to 160, but then I immediately bounced back up into the 170s and slowly trickled up to 180.
Mm,
And then I did another bulk again, brought myself down. And that brings me to, I think, December of 2023. And I had hit 160 again. So I guess we're getting to the point of like what I'm dealing with these days. I'm trying to find out, I know how to get skinny.
yep.
I know how to get fat, right?
Yep.
I know how to gain weight and get strong. What I'm kind of struggling with is achieving the level of leanness that I know I can get while
Mm,
also maintaining my physical performance.
mm,
That's really the sweet spot that I'm looking for. I can do one
mm.
or the other. I'm just having a hard time doing both simultaneously. In December of 2023, my brother in law had just passed away and he had just turned 50 and he had a heart attack and he was overweight his whole life too. I'm always telling people that it's not just about body composition. It's not just about our body weight, but it's also about you can maintain a healthy body weight by eating junk food, right? But like you want to make sure you're eating good food so that you're increasing your health span, right?
Yeah.
But I was kind of in a low place and I was at a sticking point. This is, December 2023. And my wife's like, hey, I know you follow a lot of people. Why don't you try to get yourself a coach? And I was like, really? Because like, yeah, that's not something that you want to say to your wife. Hey, I'm thinking about getting a coach and doing all these things and spending some money. But it was her suggestion. So I was like, okay, her suggestion, she's kind of giving me her blessing. So I'm like, okay, I'd be happy to tell everybody how I came across Rip Body. But yeah, Andy was the first guy that I thought about. And I
We worked
gave
together
you,
for 3 months, right?
yeah,
And
and we did it. And it was a great bulk. And we bulked up. I think when we started working together, I was in the mid 160s and we bulked up to about 180 again. And it was a great bulk. You set my calories, as I tell people, way higher than I would have on my own. And my strength just rebounded so quickly. And I was able to do so much volume. It was great. It was a really great experience. And I cut down a little bit after that. And I just did another cycle of bulking and cutting. But I'm happy to say that I've reached the 5-year mark and I've been able to maintain the big weight loss. I've actually been pretty happy about that. Yeah, I'm just going for the last 5 or 10% that I think I'm capable of.
So the question you want to know is, well, what is it that you can do from here that is going to move the needle? Because any repeat of what you've been doing is not going to lead to a different outcome.
Right.
So how do we break free of that? Before I chime in, do you have any inkling as to what that may be?
Yeah, this is where I tell people it's helpful to have a coach, someone to bounce your ideas off of, and somebody who can look at things from the outside. I know what works to get me in either direction. And I think I've recently realized how reactive my body is to my energy status. So if I do a cut, my body just drop all my glycogen, drop all my water, and my reps start going down, and that gets in my head. I'm so tempted to get out of it. And that was certainly the case when I was younger. But I know if I can handle the performance detriments, I'll lean out. But then it's like, okay, well, now I have to rebuild what I just lost, right? So what do I do?
Okay. So these are my thoughts. So we worked together for around 3 months, maybe 3.5 months, I believe it was. And during that time, we gained about 15 pounds. Of those 15 pounds, a good amount of it would have been gained in those first couple of weeks as we were transitioning from this cut into now maintenance and then a calorie surplus into the bulk, so to speak. And so let's say that you gained around, I don't have the data in front of me, sorry, I should have, but let's say that you gained around 8 pounds during those first couple of weeks. I wouldn't be surprised, given that you were a much larger person in the past. People who have been large in the past, they do tend to have larger water, gut content, glycogen swings in weight when their carbohydrate and fiber intake goes up or down. So then what we've then done over those 3 months is that we've gained, well, perhaps about 8 pounds, 7 to 8 pounds, let's say, of actual tissue. And of that, let's say that we're training super hard and consistently, which you were, and we're keeping our protein at a sufficient level, which you were, which actually is quite easy when we're bulking because our protein needs are lower. Then that means that, let's say, half of that was muscle. That means you would have gained about 3.5 pounds of muscle despite gaining 15 pounds of body weight, which some people find shocking. But if you play back what I've just said, if it's not in your head right now to anyone listening, like, you can see how that kind of maths out. Now, the key is to keep that going, because you're not going to cut at that point and be able to really notice that level of difference of muscle mass that's been gained. If you want to make a meaningful difference to your physique, you need to push that out for much, much longer. So in an ideal world, we would have gone on to continue bulking for like 10, 12 months, which would have definitely pushed your comfort zone, because let's say 180, you'd have then been getting up to about 195, which may have set off in you perhaps some level of discomfort because you're now worried about slipping back to where you were. But then as I say that, I also think because we would do this in a steady way, and I do think this is what you should do now, because you'll be doing it in a steady way, and because you aren't radically changing up your diet. By the way, this is the habit of the most successful people in the world, the bodybuilders, right? The smart ones. They don't just change everything. They just add some more carbs, take some more carbs away. The meals stay basically the same. They have more treats when they're bulking, and those occasions are more frequent, and far less when they're cutting, and then none towards a show, right? So you're doing everything right there. So then I do think it is a case of pushing that bulk out for longer. Now, the other thing that you mentioned here is when you're cutting, you find that you lose your energy, your ability to perform in your training very quickly. And of the 3 things that we want and need when we are cutting to hold on to muscle, top of the tree there is maintaining, or rather still training hard, okay? Not maintaining performance, but still training hard. Second is losing weight at an appropriate pace. And third then is protein intake. So we know what your protein intake should probably be. Somewhere between 160 and 180 is going to be perfectly fine, right? 0.9 to 1 pound per gram of body weight. In fact, 180, 160 would be fine even once you bulked up to 200 there. Regarding your training and regarding the rate of body weight change, I would aim for no faster than a pound per week of weight loss, bearing in mind that in those first couple of weeks when you do switch into the cut, you are going to lose 6 to 8 pounds, possibly even 10, because of the water, gut content, and glycogen drops, right? So ignore that. I know you mentioned using macro factor recently, and I know that Greg's, the way the graph that he's able to display there. The weight smoothing is going to be very helpful in comforting you as to what is going on, what your true underlying weight is in terms of fat and muscle mass change, or rather the combination of those. We can't actually tell which is which. And then try to continue on that slow rate of weight loss, with the caveat that if your training performance really starts to tank, take it more slowly. So consider going at just 3/4 pound per week, perhaps even 1/2 pound per week, but I don't think you'd need to take it quite that slowly. For the training that is more higher rep and longer, CrossFit type training, for example, you can expect more of a performance drop when you are restricting carbs. If we're just talking about your regular strength training, you're likely going to be able to maintain your strength for much longer with that, although the RPE, the perceived effort that you're putting into it, is going to be a little bit higher as you fatigue. So you may need to increase your rest periods between your sets, which is totally fine as long as you have the time. The key to maintaining your muscle mass here is to continue to train with the same intensity of effort. Another way of saying this is to continue to train as equally close to failure, which should be pretty close for most of your sets, i.e. within a couple of reps. And if you do that and you continue to hit the main body parts, so that's the 6 main movement patterns plus some isolations. So squat, hip hinge being a deadlift or some form of RDL, upper body push-pull, horizontal push, horizontal pull, vertical push, vertical pull, then you should be okay. But your squat, bench, and deadlift overall numbers, you can expect those to decline. And if they were to decline by 10, 15%, then that wouldn't be unexpected. If your chin-ups specifically were to suddenly tank, and I don't mean during this first week or two where your body's kind of getting used to this energy deficit, then that would be, say, a sign that you need to slow things down, because of course, as you're leaning out, you're getting lighter, you should be able to maintain your performance, if not improve it during that time. Is there anything that I've said there? So 2 pieces. One is bulking for longer, which I know can be mentally tough, but prepare yourself, push through. The other piece here is what we just said about that steady rate of cutting plus performance. Did anything in that second piece of what I just said kind of set off any bells of, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Perhaps I didn't quite do that right last time?
I think I tend to try to be a little bit too aggressive when I try to cut. And I think you're absolutely right with the perception of the weight gain and the surplus. And like, that's a really hard thing for me. Not just seeing the body weight go, you know what? So I did an 8-week cut. No, I'm sorry, an 8-week bulk. And I know that's not long, but I was maintaining this summer. And when one of our fur babies passed away in June, I just wasn't in the right headspace to maintain, and I wasn't going to cut. And I'm like, my training's been pretty stagnant for the past couple of months. Let me increase my calories and just lean into it. And you know what? It was an experiment, and I only checked my body weight like every 2 weeks while I did that, just because I was just relying on the mirror, my performance, and my satiety. I was still tracking my calories, but it's such a mind game for me, and as it is for everybody. But
Yeah.
with my weight history, I know that I just don't need that extra baggage of just seeing the scale weight tick up every day. I'd
Yeah.
rather just like get the bill all at once every couple of weeks. And then, yeah, the first time it was pretty substantial, but every week or 2 after that, smaller increments. Maybe I titrated calories a little bit more, but I wasn't being as too aggressive. I was just really trying to listen to my body. But yeah, even everything I know, everything I've experienced, it's really hard for me to just feel my body expanding and just seeing the lines disappear.
Yeah.
And I've been through this so many times that I know I'm capable of it, but it's almost like there's amnesia there, right? And in both directions. So
It's
the
very hard
surplus
to
or
do
dieting.
this by yourself because your mind plays tricks, right? There's the logic of it and then there's the psychology of it, right? And we can get in our heads. Like half of that is the reason why people hire us and keep us on, right? It's not that we've got any secrets. We really don't. It's all on the website for free, right? It's that accountability and then stopping people from second guessing what they're doing, right? And looking at the data and saying, hey, yeah, this looks right. Look, this isn't a pitch for coaching. I think you're very close. And I think it is as simple as bulk for longer, cut a little slower, expect those larger weight fluctuations. And I would say if you can bring yourself to do it, it would be very helpful if you could get up, pee, and weigh yourself every morning. Pop that into Macro Factor and just trust that algorithm is going to smooth out. It's going to plot the actual day-to-day weight, but it's also going to plot your average changes. And that's going to be, I think that will help reassure you. Because everything else, honestly, seems set.
Yeah, I tell you, I guess with my experience with all of this, I'm at the point where I'm just chasing those little or last 10% that I know I'm capable of, right? And
Yeah.
then I know how to maintain, I know how to cut, I know how to bulk, but it's like I want to be able to maintain all my performance gains as I go in one direction or the other, right? And that's what I'm struggling with. But I like your advice.
Yeah, I think that you have an opportunity here for a whole step level change in your physique. We're not talking about adding like 1 or 2% here to things. We're talking about making a jump. It's hard to put really a percentage on this, but like a noticeable, visible jump. And the way to do it is these small, I say, tweaks, which will make a very outsized difference, because it sounds to me like up until now, you haven't given your body the conditions necessary to grow for long enough. And then when you have made progress in your muscle mass, unfortunately, you've been a little bit aggressive in your cuts and you've lost some of that gain. And so while it would be an exaggeration to say that you haven't gained any muscle over the last few years, it's probably accurate to say that you haven't gained a meaningful level of muscle mass for your efforts, for you to really be motivated and happy at this point. So I can understand your frustration. And I think as easy it is to say and as difficult potentially it is to implement, I think you're very close to making quite a dramatic transformation for you at this point. Obviously, dramatic was when you lost half your body weight, but quite a dramatic transformation over the next 2.5 years, where you bulk, cut, bulk, cut. I think I can very much see an email in my inbox, 2027 summer, where you're going, boom, Andy, look at this. And I very much look forward to it. And please know that you're welcome to shoot me an email anytime if you have questions or are struggling.
No, I appreciate that. Everything you've done, I really appreciate everything and our time together, but everything before that. And I don't know how familiar a lot of listeners are with all the content on your website, but and that's a gold mine, right? And then there's a couple of books over your shoulder that are also a gold mine.
Thank you.
It's definitely worth the investment on all those. Yeah. Thank you for everything, Andy. I really appreciate it.
No, but I appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming on, Joe, and sharing your story. I'm confident that there will be people out there listening that will certainly feel inspired by this. So I know it's not easy, and thanks.
No, thank you for everything. Really appreciate it.
Do send me an email and let us know how you get on.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. There are a few ways that we can help you at Rip Body. Obviously, our flagship product is our coaching. It's myself, Sam, and Matt currently, and we'd love to see if we can help if that is of interest. Also, we have some books. We've got the Muscle and Strength Pyramids that you can see over my shoulder, and also the Diet Adjustments Manual, which kind of takes the free nutrition setup guide that I have that you can download, by the way, if you just put your email address into the box on the homepage. And it extends on that and telling you what to do once your diet is set up to help you to cut, bulk, and all of the transitional elements in between. It's my coaching knowledge into a book, and it's what I used to bring Matt and Sam up to speed. If you're interested in using MacroFactor, which we mentioned a few times on the pod, macrofactorapp.com, and obviously choose the Play Store or the iTunes Store. Is it still called that? App Store. And enter in the code RIPPED, and you can have a extended free trial. So instead of 1 week, it will be 2. And of course, please know that I'm here to help. We're here to help. You can just shoot me an email. Even better, you could add a comment onto any of the articles on the website. I've been writing that for the last 14 years, and I answer the comments every day. You writing there helps to help other people because they get to see my answers. All right, that's it. Thank you very much. I'll catch you next time.